The forest was silent but not peaceful. The tall black trees stood like broken towers, their branches heavy with wet leaves. A storm had passed only hours ago, and the ground was still soft with mud. The air smelled of rain and ash as if the sky itself had burned. A man walked slowly through the trees. His name was Daniel, a lone explorer on this strange alien world. His boots sank into the wet ground with every step. He carried a small lamp in one hand and a tool pack on his back. The light from the lamp cut through the mist, showing the shapes of twisted roots and fallen rocks. Daniel was used to silence. He had been alone on many worlds before, but tonight something felt different. The silence was heavy, too heavy, as if the forest was holding its breath. He paused, listening. The sound came again, a faint noise like a soft cry almost lost in the wind. He turned his head, scanning the darkness. At first he thought it was only the forest shifting after the storm. But then he heard it again, closer this time. A weak voice, broken and trembling. Someone was out there. Daniel followed the sound. His lamp shook in his hand as he moved faster, pushing through thick branches. The voice grew clearer, not human, but not fully alien either. It carried pain, fear, and something else, a strange melody that pulled him closer. Then he saw her. At the edge of a small clearing, half covered in mud, lay a figure. A woman. She was on her knees, her body shaking, her long hair plastered with dirt and rain. Her skin, though hidden under mud, glowed faintly as if light lived beneath it. Her arms were thin, trembling, and her face was lowered into the ground as if she had no strength left to rise. Daniel froze. She was not human. He could see it now. Her shape was close, but her features were not the same. Her eyes, half hidden by mud, glimmered faintly with silver light. Strange markings ran along her skin like glowing scars, symbols he had never seen before. For a moment he thought she might be dangerous. Perhaps she was a creature left behind by the storm. Perhaps she was a trap. But then she tried to lift her head and he saw something he did not expect. Fear. She was afraid, more than he was. Her lips moved, trying to speak. The words were broken, mixed with sounds he could not understand. But her eyes, her glowing silver eyes, looked at him with the desperation of someone begging for help. Daniel's heart beat faster. He stepped closer, slowly, careful not to frighten her. The mud pulled at his boots as he knelt down beside her. He could smell the earth, the wet moss, and the strange metallic scent that came from her skin. "Can you hear me?" he whispered, though he knew she would not understand. The woman blinked, her breathing rough and shallow. She tried to move, but her body was too weak. Her arms slipped into the mud again. A soft sound left her lips, almost like a sob. Daniel made his choice. He pulled a cloth from his pack and reached out. Gently, he wiped the mud from her face. Bit by bit, her true features appeared. Her skin was pale with a faint silver glow. Her cheekbones were sharp, her lips cracked but soft. She looked fragile, almost broken, but there was something powerful hidden beneath her weakness. For the first time, her eyes met his clearly. The silver glow grew brighter, reflecting the small lamp in his hand. He felt a shiver crawl down his spine, not from fear, but from the strange weight of her gaze. She whispered again. A single word, soft and broken, but filled with meaning he could not grasp. It sounded like forsaken. Daniel's breath caught. He did not know her language, yet he felt the truth in her voice. She had been left here, abandoned, forgotten. The forest stirred around them. A branch cracked in the distance. The woman flinched, her eyes wide with terror. She tried to rise again, her body shaking with effort, but she fell back. Her hands clawed at the ground as if something unseen was chasing her even now. Daniel looked into the trees. The mist was thicker there, shadows shifting between the trunks. He felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. Someone or something was watching. He put his hand on her shoulder. "You're safe," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was true. The woman's breathing slowed slightly, but her eyes never left the dark forest. She knew what was out there. She knew the danger was not gone. Daniel pulled her gently to her feet. She leaned against him, weak and trembling, her silver glow flickering like a dying flame. Step by step, he carried her away from the clearing, deeper into the woods, his lamp swinging in the dark. Behind them, the forest moved again. A low sound echoed. Not wind, not storm, but something alive, something hunting. And so it began. The campfire burned low, its weak flames fighting against the cold air of the alien night. Daniel sat close to it, his lamp placed on the ground beside him. Across the fire, the strange woman lay wrapped in his emergency blanket. Her silver glow pulsed faintly under the fabric, like a fading star refusing to die. He had carried her here after finding her in the mud. His shoulders still ached from the weight, though she was light as air. What stayed heavy was not her body. It was the questions pressing into his mind. Who was she? Why was she here? And why did she look at the shadows of the forest with such fear? Daniel wiped the sweat and rain from his face. His stomach turned as he glanced at her again. She was alien, no doubt about that. But she wasn't like the others he had read about in reports or seen in archives. Her features were closer to human, close enough to feel familiar yet strange enough to feel dangerous. She stirred, groaning softly. Daniel leaned forward. The firelight touched her face as she turned toward him. Mud still clung to her hair, but her eyes were clear now, silver glowing faintly like polished metal reflecting fire. Daniel spoke gently, keeping his voice low. "Can you hear me?" She blinked slowly, as if dragging herself back from another world. Her lips parted. Words came out soft and broken. They were not English. They were not any language Daniel had ever heard. But her tone, her trembling voice was filled with need. He didn't move closer yet. He only nodded, showing her he was listening. The woman tried to lift her hand, weak and shaking. Her fingers brushed against the ground, tracing shapes in the dirt. Daniel frowned. At first he thought she was too weak to move, but then he saw the pattern. She was writing. Lines, curves, symbols. Strange marks burned faintly as if her very touch carried light. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes wide. The symbols meant nothing to him, but the way she drew them, quick, urgent, desperate, told him they were not random. They were warnings. The woman finished the last mark, then lifted her glowing eyes toward him. She pointed weakly toward the trees behind him. Her lips moved again, the same broken word repeated this time with fear. Forsaken. Forsaken. Daniel turned sharply. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. He grabbed his lamp and shone it into the mist. The beam cut across the branches, showing only fog and shadow. But deep inside, something moved. Something shifted when it should not have. His throat tightened. He turned back to her. Her face was pale, her breathing quick. She shook her head again and again, whispering the same word as if begging him to understand. Daniel crouched beside her. He placed his hand gently on hers, trying to calm her. She froze at first, surprised, but did not pull away. Her skin was cool, smooth, almost too perfect, and yet her hand trembled like a frightened child. "You're safe," Daniel whispered. His voice was steady, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "I won't let anything happen to you." For a moment, the fear in her eyes softened. She studied him, her silver gaze flickering with some new emotion, hope maybe, or disbelief. Then slowly, carefully, Daniel reached for the cloth again. He began wiping the mud from her hair, her cheeks, her forehead. Bit by bit, her true face came to light. The fire reflected off the strange patterns across her skin, markings like glowing rivers beneath the surface. They pulsed faintly with each beat of her heart. Daniel stared, caught between awe and confusion. He had never seen anything like her. She looked fragile, yet those markings hinted at hidden strength. The woman watched him, silent now. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she raised her hand again and touched his chest right above his heart. Daniel stiffened, but he didn't pull back. Her fingers glowed faintly where they touched, leaving a mark of light on his shirt. She tilted her head, studying him with sharp curiosity, as if she was trying to understand him as much as he was trying to understand her. Then from the forest, a sound broke the moment. A branch snapped loud and sharp. Daniel froze. The woman's eyes widened in terror. She clutched his arm, her strength suddenly stronger than before. Her whole body shook as she whispered something fast and urgent in her strange tongue. Daniel grabbed his lamp and stood, scanning the trees. The mist moved strangely, like figures shifting just beyond the light. He couldn't see them clearly, but the weight of their presence pressed against his chest. The woman tried to sit up, reaching for him, pointing again toward the shadows. Her face was pale with fear. Daniel's heart pounded. Whoever she was, whatever she was not alone. And whoever hunted her had just found their trail. He stepped back to her, kneeling quickly. "We need to move," he whispered. He slid his arms under her and lifted her again. She was light, far too light, but she clung to him tightly this time as if she trusted him now. The fire hissed behind them as he kicked dirt over it. The camp was swallowed by darkness. The lamp was their only light as he carried her into the trees. The forest groaned with unseen life. Shadows followed them, silent but certain. Daniel tightened his grip on her. Whatever had begun in that clearing was no longer chance. It was a choice. And now he was part of it. The forest was alive with whispers. Leaves shifted though no wind touched them, and the mist curled like fingers reaching from the dark. Daniel walked quickly, his lamp cutting a thin path of light between the trees. In his arms the alien woman trembled. Her silver glow flickered faintly against his chest like a candle about to die. He could feel her fear. Every time a branch cracked in the distance, she clutched tighter at his shirt. Every time the shadows moved, her body stiffened. Daniel had been in dangerous places before, but this fear, this sharp, silent terror in her eyes, was something else. Finally, he stopped near a cluster of rocks. The ground was drier here, safer. He lowered her gently onto the stone, setting the lamp nearby. She leaned against the rock, her chest rising fast as if she had been running for days. Daniel crouched in front of her. "We can't keep moving all night," he whispered. "We'll both collapse. We stay here just for a little." Her glowing eyes met his. She shook her head quickly, almost violently. Then with effort she dragged her hand across the stone beside her. Lines appeared, bright glowing marks, burning softly into the rock as if her touch carried fire. Daniel stared in shock. She wasn't just drawing. She was carving symbols with nothing but her skin. The symbols came fast, circles, sharp lines, strange curves like stars and paths. She paused only to breathe, then pressed on, her hand trembling with urgency. When she finished, the stone was filled with glowing signs that pulsed like living veins of light. Daniel leaned closer. "What is this?" The woman raised her head. Her lips moved slowly, forming words he didn't know. Then she repeated one sound, forcing it into something like his language. "Hunter," she whispered. Daniel froze. His chest tightened as the words sank in. The shapes on the stone, were they maps? Warnings? He looked closer. Some marks looked like trees, others like figures. He saw a circle with many sharp lines around it. "Teeth. They're hunting you," Daniel murmured. She nodded, weak but certain. Then she touched one symbol near the center, a shape like a star split in half. Her finger pressed against it with pain in her eyes, and she whispered again, "Forsaken." Daniel's throat went dry. She wasn't just lost. She had been abandoned, left behind for these hunters to finish. Before he could speak, the forest stirred. A low hum echoed between the trees, soft at first, then sharper, like blades scraping together. The woman gasped and pressed her hands over her ears. Daniel grabbed his lamp and stood scanning the darkness. Shapes moved in the mist, shadows that weren't shadows. He saw eyes, too many eyes, glimmering faintly before vanishing again. The woman pointed at the stone, her finger shaking. Then she pressed her palm against another symbol, a spiral leading into a sharp line. She looked at him, desperate, and whispered in broken words, "Go. Path safe." Daniel understood enough. She was telling him where to go. But her face told him more. She wasn't sure if it truly was safe. He crouched and touched her shoulder. "I'm not leaving you here." Her glowing eyes widened. She shook her head, whispering again, this time with panic. "No, no. You go." Daniel tightened his jaw. "Not without you." For a moment she stared at him as if she couldn't believe his stubbornness. Then slowly her shoulders dropped. Something changed in her eyes, something softer, almost human. The humming grew louder. A shadow slipped between two trees, tall and thin, its limbs bending in ways no body should. Daniel lifted the lamp, but the figure melted back into the mist. The woman grabbed his wrist suddenly. Her fingers burned with faint silver light. She pressed his hand against one of the glowing symbols on the rock. To his shock, the stone warmed beneath his skin and the symbol changed, shifting like living fire. The woman gasped and spoke one more broken word. "Bond." Daniel pulled back, startled. His palm glowed faintly now, marked by the same light that ran across her skin. She sagged against the rock, exhausted, as if that small act had taken what little strength she had left. Daniel stared at his hand. What had she done? A branch snapped nearby. The mist parted for a moment, and Daniel saw them clearly this time. 3 hunters, tall and armored, their faces hidden by dark masks. Their movements were sharp, unnatural, like machines wearing skin. Each carried a long spear that pulsed with dim red light. Daniel's breath caught. They were searching. He quickly grabbed the woman and pulled her away from the glowing rock. The hunters approached the stones, their eyes scanning, their heads twitching unnaturally. One of them touched the glowing carvings. The symbols flared, then dimmed as if ashamed to be seen. The woman buried her face against Daniel's chest, whispering in her broken voice, "No. Nope, found." Daniel's mind raced. They couldn't fight, not now. The hunters were too strong, too many. Their only chance was to stay hidden and trust the path she had given him. He held her tighter, his hand still glowing faintly from the strange bond she had placed on him. Whatever it meant, it had connected them. Their fates were now tied together. Daniel moved silently, carrying her into the deeper dark of the forest. Behind them, the hunters lingered near the stones, their red spears burning faintly in the mist. The woman trembled in his arms but whispered one last word before exhaustion pulled her into silence. Together. Daniel didn't know if she meant survival, escape, or something far greater. But he knew one thing for certain. The hunters would never stop until they had her. And now they would never stop until they had him too. The forest no longer whispered. It screamed. Daniel ran through the dark, his boots striking the wet ground in heavy steps. The woman clung to his chest, weak but awake, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Behind them, the hunters moved like shadows, silent but certain, their red spears cutting through the mist like burning stars. Daniel's lamp swung wildly, its light catching twisted branches and roots. Every second he expected to feel a spear pierce his back. Every second the hunters grew closer. "Hold on," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Just hold on." The woman's breathing was sharp against his ear. She whispered words he didn't understand, but the tone was clear. Warning, pleading, urging him not to stop. A sharp hum cracked the air. Daniel ducked just in time. A spear flew past, striking a tree with a hiss. The wood glowed red where it hit, burning as if fire had crawled under the bark. Daniel didn't look back. He pushed harder, his lungs burning. His only thought was forward. Forward into the dark, forward into survival. The ground sloped downward. His feet slid on wet leaves and he nearly fell. The woman cried out softly, clutching tighter to him. He regained his balance, panting hard. The mist grew thicker ahead, swallowing the trees in white. For a moment, Daniel thought they had a chance. Maybe the hunters would lose them. But then he heard it, the hum, low and steady, like machines breathing. They were not losing him. They were closing in. Daniel spotted a narrow path between two cliffs. It was tight, barely wide enough for a man to pass. He darted toward it, hoping the narrow walls would slow the hunters. The woman lifted her head, saw the path, and shook her head frantically. "No, trap," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel skidded to a halt. His instinct screamed at him to run forward, but her voice was sharp with fear. He trusted her. He turned away from the cliffs and pushed into thicker woods instead. A spear hissed past his shoulder. It missed by inches, striking the ground with a crack. Mud and sparks flew into the air. Daniel stumbled, then ran harder, his muscles burning. The woman raised her hand weakly, pointing toward the left. Her glowing fingers trembled but guided him. He followed her direction, forcing his way through thorny vines. The thorns tore at his arms and face, but he didn't stop. Behind them, the hunters moved faster now. Their tall figures slipped between the trees without effort, their glowing red eyes never losing the trail. Daniel's chest tightened. He had been in dangerous missions before, but never like this. Never hunted like prey. Never carrying someone who depended on him for every step. Just a little more, he whispered to her, though he didn't know if it was true. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath him. He slipped down a muddy slope, sliding fast. The woman gasped, clinging tightly as they tumbled together. Daniel hit the bottom hard, the air knocked from his chest. For a moment, he lay still, stunned. Then he heard it, the soft hum above growing louder as the hunters reached the slope. Daniel forced himself up. The woman groaned but tried to sit beside him. She pointed again, her glowing hand shaking. Ahead, hidden behind the roots of a giant tree, was a hollow passage, dark and narrow. Daniel hesitated. It looked dangerous, too tight, too unknown. But the hunters were seconds away. He had no choice. He crawled into the hollow, dragging her with him. The roots scraped his back, Dirt fell into his hair and the space pressed around him. The woman's glow lit the tunnel faintly, showing damp walls and twisting roots. They pushed deeper, deeper into the dark. Behind them, the hum grew louder. The hunters had reached the slope. One of them dropped into the mud with a heavy thud. Its red spear glowed like fire in the mist. Daniel crawled faster, ignoring the pain in his knees and hands. The woman's breathing was ragged, but she didn't stop urging him forward. The tunnel ended suddenly, opening into another part of the forest. Daniel stumbled out, gasping for air. The woman fell against him, too weak to stand. Then the sound came, sharp, metallic, angry. One of the hunters forced its way into the hollow. Its tall figure bent unnaturally, its glowing eyes locked on them. Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned and ran again, pushing himself harder than ever. His legs screamed, his chest burned, but he didn't slow. The woman pressed her face against his shoulder, whispering broken words that sounded like prayers. Branches whipped his face. Roots clawed at his boots. The hunters followed without slowing, their red light cutting through the dark like a curse that never ended. Finally, Daniel saw it. A river, wide and rushing, cutting through the forest ahead. The water foamed against black rocks, wild and loud. It was dangerous, but it was the only chance. He didn't think. He ran straight into the water. The cold hit like knives, dragging at his legs, pulling at his chest. The woman cried out, but he held her tightly. Behind them, the hunters stopped at the shore. Their glowing eyes scanned the water, their spears humming with power. They did not follow. Daniel fought against the current, pushing forward with everything he had. The water pulled, but he refused to let go. Step by step, he reached the far side, collapsing onto the muddy bank. The woman coughed, her silver glow dim but alive. She clung to him weakly, her eyes filled with something new, not just fear but trust. Daniel lay back, gasping, his body shaking from exhaustion. Across the river, the hunters stood silently, watching. They didn't cross. They didn't leave. They only waited. The chase was not over. It had only just begun. The river roared behind them, its wild water hiding their tracks. Daniel sat on the muddy bank, his chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. His arms ached from carrying her. His legs trembled from the chase. But for now, there was silence. The hunters had not crossed. Beside him, the woman lay weak but alive. Her silver glow flickered faintly in the dark, like the last spark of a dying fire. She coughed softly, the sound fragile, almost human. Daniel turned to her, brushing wet hair from her face. "You're safe, for now," he whispered. Her glowing eyes opened slowly. They held his gaze, filled with something more than fear. A question, a hope, a weight she had carried too long. Daniel pulled his lamp from his pack, setting it between them. The soft light pushed back the mist, showing the forest beyond the river. For the first time since the chase began, he could think. He studied her carefully. She was alien, yes, but the way she breathed, the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes searched his face, it all felt painfully familiar. Like she was caught between two worlds. "Who are you?" he asked softly. She tried to speak. At first, only broken sounds left her lips. Her voice shook with effort. Then slowly, painfully, words came. "Not like them." Daniel leaned closer. "Not like who?" Her face tightened. She turned her gaze toward the river, as if afraid the hunters might hear even across the water. Her voice was a whisper. "My kind." Daniel frowned. He remembered the hunters, tall, armored, merciless. Were they her people? Had they abandoned her? She saw his confusion and raised her trembling hand. Her fingers brushed her own skin, tracing the glowing markings across her arms. Then she touched her chest, pressing hard, her silver light flaring faintly. "Different," she said. "Forsaken." Daniel's throat tightened. He understood enough. She was born different, and her people had cast her out. The hunters were not strangers. They were executioners sent to erase her existence. Her lips trembled as she continued. "They fear me." Daniel shook his head. "Why? You're weak, He stopped himself. No, she wasn't weak. He remembered the way her fingers burned symbols into stone, the way her skin glowed with hidden power. She wasn't weak. She was dangerous to them. The woman lowered her gaze. Her voice cracked. "They want." Silence end. Daniel felt a surge of anger. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a threat. She was alone, abandoned by those who should have protected her. He leaned closer, his voice firm. "They won't end you. Not while I'm here." Her glowing eyes widened. For a moment, disbelief filled her face as if she had never heard words like that before. Slowly, tears gathered at the edges of her eyes, glowing faintly in the lamplight. But then, she shook her head, whispering broken words. No, not safe. You, with me? Danger. Daniel clenched his fists. He knew she was right. The hunters wouldn't stop. By saving her, he had made himself a target too. But when he looked at her trembling hands, at the pain in her eyes, he knew leaving her was impossible. You're not alone anymore, he said simply. She studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then with effort, she lifted her hand. She touched his chest again, right where she had marked him before. Her fingers glowed brighter this time. Daniel felt heat spread through him, not painful but heavy, like invisible chains pulling at his heart. The mark she had left on his palm flared with light. What are you doing? He whispered. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough now. Bond. Deeper. Share. Suddenly, Daniel saw flashes, images that weren't his, a sky filled with silver stars, a city of towers glowing with light, a girl, younger, standing among others like her, but marked different. He felt her loneliness, her fear, her rejection. He felt the moment her people turned their backs on her, branding her as forsaken. Daniel gasped and pulled back, his chest heaving. The images faded, but the feeling remained deep and heavy inside him. He looked at her in shock. You showed me. She nodded weakly. Now, you know. Daniel struggled for words. He had never experienced anything like it. She had let him feel her life, her pain, and now he understood her better than anyone ever had. The forest stirred suddenly. Daniel turned sharply, his hand going to his pack. Across the river, the hunters still waited. They hadn't left. Their glowing red eyes burned in the mist, watching. The woman shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around her. Her voice cracked again. They never stop. Never. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew she was right. The hunters would follow until she was gone. Until they both were gone. But now he knew something else too. She wasn't just a victim. She was something greater. Something her people feared enough to forsake. And whatever that was, it might be the only thing that could save them both. He looked at her glowing eyes and whispered, steady and sure, then we don't stop either. For the first time, her lips curved faintly, the ghost of a smile, fragile, uncertain, but real. And in that moment, Daniel understood. The hunters weren't chasing only her. They were chasing the future she carried inside her. The night deepened. Mist rolled over the river, curling like smoke. Across the dark water, the hunters still stood, silent, patient. Their red eyes glowed faintly in the fog, unblinking. They didn't move closer, but Daniel felt their presence pressing against his chest like heavy stone. The woman sat beside him, wrapped in his blanket. Her glow pulsed faintly, but her strength had not returned. She watched the hunters with wide eyes, her lips trembling with each breath. Every flicker of red light made her flinch. Daniel tightened his grip on his lamp. He had hoped the river would keep them safe, at least for a while. But it wasn't safety, it was only delay. The hunters weren't leaving. They were waiting. He looked at her. They won't stop, will they? Her silver eyes met his. She shook her head slowly. Her voice was faint but certain. Never. Daniel's jaw tightened. His body ached from running, but his mind burned with one question. What now? They couldn't keep fleeing. She was too weak. He was too human. The hunters would always be faster, stronger. And yet, the thought of leaving her, abandoning her like her own people had, was unbearable. The woman reached for his hand. Her touch was cold but steady. She whispered a broken word. Choice. Daniel frowned. Choice? She nodded. Her trembling hand pointed toward the forest behind them, away from the river. Run, she whispered. Then she lowered her gaze, pressing her hand against her chest. Or fight. Daniel's breath caught. The word hung heavy in the air. Fight. He stared at her, searching her face. She was frail, yes, but there was something hidden beneath her glow. Power. A power her people had feared. A power the hunters wanted destroyed. Can you fight them? He asked carefully. Her eyes darkened with pain. She shook her head once, then paused. Slowly she lifted her hand, the faint silver markings along her arm flickering brighter. She pressed her palm against the ground, and for a moment the earth trembled. Small cracks spread beneath her touch, glowing faintly like veins of light. She pulled her hand back quickly, gasping, her body weak again. Not alone, she whispered. Daniel understood. She had power, yes, but she couldn't control it alone. Not anymore. His chest tightened. The choice was clear and it terrified him. If they ran, the hunters would follow until the end of time. If they fought, they might die before the sun rose. The woman's eyes filled with sorrow. She looked at him as if expecting him to choose escape, to abandon her for his own survival. That was what others had done to her. That was why she called herself forsaken. Daniel looked back at the hunters across the river. Their red spears glowed faintly in the mist. He thought of their silence, their patience, their certainty. He thought of what she had shown him, her memories, her pain, her rejection. And then he knew. He turned to her, his voice steady. "We fight." Her eyes widened. For a moment, she only stared at him, as if she hadn't understood. Then her lips parted in disbelief. "Fight with me?" Daniel nodded firmly. "With you, always." Tears welled in her glowing eyes. Her hands shook as she touched his chest again, right over the mark she had burned into him. The bond flared brighter this time, silver light spreading across his skin. He felt heat rush through him, not painful but heavy, filling his veins like fire. The woman gasped, her glow surging stronger for the first time since he had found her. She whispered one word, soft but powerful. "Together." Daniel clenched his fists. He felt stronger now, though he didn't understand why. The bond had connected them deeper than before. Her power was touching him, flowing into him, tying their lives as one. Across the river, the hunters stirred, their heads tilted unnaturally, their red eyes flashing. They had seen the glow. They knew the choice had been made. Daniel stood tall, lifting the lamp in one hand. His voice was low but sharp. "Then let them come." The woman rose slowly, leaning against him for support. Her silver glow spread brighter, lighting the mist around them. The hunters stepped closer to the river, their spears humming with sharp energy. The air grew heavy. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Daniel knew what was coming. This was no longer a chase. This was a stand. The hunters would cross the river. They would come for her. They would try to erase her as they had always intended. But now she was not alone, and he had made his choice. The river hissed under the pale moonlight. Mist curled across its surface, glowing faintly in silver and red. On one side stood Daniel and the forsaken woman, her fragile body pressed against his for strength, her silver light spreading brighter than ever. On the other side, the hunters moved at last. They stepped into the water, tall and silent, their black armor shining with wet reflections. Their spears hummed with power, each strike of their boots sending ripples across the river. The sound was not footsteps, it was a march slow and certain. Daniel tightened his grip on the lamp, though he knew it was useless. He could feel his heart hammering, yet he didn't step back. The woman beside him raised her glowing hand. Her eyes burned bright, no longer just afraid, but filled with something sharper. Determination. The first hunter reached the bank. It raised its spear high, red light cutting through the mist. Daniel whispered, "Now." The woman pressed her palm against the ground. Silver light exploded outward, running in sharp lines across the mud like lightning veins. The earth shook. The hunter staggered, but only for a breath. It struck the ground with its spear, breaking the light. Daniel pulled the woman close, and the bond between them flared. His chest burned where she had marked him. His palm glowed as if fire lived inside it. Suddenly he felt her strength rush into him, her pain, her power, her will. He lifted his hand without thinking. Silver light shot from his palm, striking the hunter's chest. The creature reeled back, its armor sizzling. For the first time it made a sound, a metallic cry, sharp and inhuman. Daniel gasped, his arm shaking. I felt that." The woman's lips curved faintly, her voice trembling. "Bond, share, fight." Another hunter leapt forward, spear aimed at them. The woman raised both hands. Silver arcs spun from her fingers, striking the spear mid-air. It shattered into glowing shards. The hunter roared, stumbling. Daniel stepped in front of her. His body moved on instinct, guided by the bond. When the third hunter charged, he swung his glowing palm, sending a wave of silver light that threw the creature back into the water. The river boiled where it landed. Daniel stood panting, staring at his hand in disbelief. This is your power." The woman shook her head softly, her silver eyes fixed on him. "Not mine. Ours. The hunters regrouped. Their movements sharpened faster now, more vicious. They circled, their red eyes burning brighter. Daniel knew this wasn't over. They would not fall so easily. The first hunter lunged, spear glowing like fire. Daniel blocked with his hand, the silver mark flaring bright. The clash shook the ground, sparks of red and silver exploding between them. The hunter pushed harder, its strength impossible. Daniel's knees buckled until the woman placed her hand on his back. Her glow flowed into him again. Strength surged through his arms. With a cry, he shoved the spear aside and struck the hunter's chest. The silver light pierced its armor. The creature fell, twisting, its body dissolving into smoke and ash. The other two hunters hissed in unison. Their red lights flared, their forms shifting. For a moment, Daniel saw what they truly were. Not just armored soldiers, but something less alive, something half machine, half shadow. Things made for one purpose only, to erase her. The woman's voice cracked. They stronger, but we stronger together. Daniel nodded, sweat running down his face. He believed her. He had to. The hunters attacked at once. One leapt high, its spear spinning. The other struck low, fast as lightning. Daniel dodged, silver light bursting from his arms. The woman raised her hands, her glow wrapping around them like a shield. The spears hit, sparks flying, but the shield held. Together they pushed forward. Daniel struck one hunter with a blast of silver light while the woman unleashed a wave that cracked the ground. The forest shook. Trees splintered. The hunters staggered, hissing. Then with one final scream, the woman poured everything into a single strike. Her glow spread like a star exploding, blinding silver filling the night. Daniel held her steady as the power rushed through both of them. The hunters shrieked, their forms burning in the light. One collapsed into smoke. The other staggered, falling into the river, its body dissolving as the current dragged it away. Silence. Only the river roared now, mist curled, broken by fading red sparks. The hunters were gone. Daniel lowered the woman gently to the ground. She trembled, her glow dimming again, her strength spent. Her silver eyes met his, filled with exhaustion. And something else, gratitude. You saved me, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. No, we saved each other. She smiled faintly, fragile but real. For a moment, peace settled between them. The bond pulsed softly, warm and alive. But then the sky above shifted. Clouds split. A low hum rolled across the air, deep, heavy, endless. Daniel looked up, his heart sinking. Far above the forest, lights appeared. Dozens of them. Red, sharp, unblinking, the woman's face paled. She clutched his hand tightly. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. Not the end. The beginning. Daniel's stomach turned cold. If the hunters they had faced were only a few, then what was coming now? He tightened his grip on her hand, his voice low but certain. Then we'll face it, together. The red lights in the sky grew brighter, descending like a storm. The mist rose to meet them, and the night was far from over.